Welcome to the PranaTech podcast.
Don Samoil, who has a very interesting background in serial entrepreneurship, has been in a variety of different industries, ranging from healthcare, blockchain, tech in general, and really understanding what happened in the tech, the dot-com boom compared to what's going on right now in the AI boom. So I'll let Don introduce himself and give the audience a little bit of a background about you.
Thank you. Don't know. You probably don't want to go too far back, right? Kindergarten or whatever. I think we can start with the dot coms because actually just before the dot coms sold some of the first websites to some of the Fortune 5, which was a really fun time and a very interesting experience, and I think was pertinent in that the gray beards that I laughed at that I now resemble, they were hearing about this World Wide Web on CNN, and they had a feeling that this is something I should learn about. It might become important business wise, but they really didn't know where to turn, who to talk to, and so I was fortunate and connected up with a group that what was doing that. And I mean that's a whole other story for another day. If one of these days we want to share sob stories of woulda, coulda, shoulda. This was a group that at one point had what was the agency of record for the internet for probably 20 or 30% of the Fortune 5, and went through 3 CFOs in 6 months and burned through a bunch of people. Like when I started getting calls, Don, you walked out of here with a contract and a check, and it's been weeks, and we still see like nothing about this website that we're supposed to be getting, not even some sketches, some kind of draft, nothing. Then I said, like, I don't want my name to be tarnished, right? With these, and I don't think they were bad. They didn't mean, to defraud anyone. They were just not competent, right? And they fumbled.
Fair enough.
They fumbled that unbelievable. Can you imagine, like, being, again, would have been, Yahoo, Google, whatever, right? Had the tiger by the tail and just, fumbled it. So, one of my early lessons in entrepreneurship there was you can be first. You can have a killer product or service. You can have everything lined up for you, but if you don't execute, if you don't stay focused, you will be a footnote in history, like these guys became. So the next major initiative, what was much better, an early Microsoft guy had found something called collaborative filtering. They were doing studies at the University of Minnesota, and so they put together this recommendation engine and found this visionary and said, look, the only way you are going to compete if this e-commerce thing ever does pan out, because look, and please, tell me to stop, or maybe you'll edit this or whatever, right? I can tell stories till the cows come home.
Keep going. This is what the audience wants to hear. This is trends we like to hear.
So the early internet was kind of like a commune, right? Everybody was online, talking, sharing. Now again, talking, right? This is, the DOS days for the most part. Very few people had a GUI. There were no cameras. Nobody even had photos, right? So you were talking to people via text chat, and no idea what they looked like, in many cases, where they were, no real names, nothing like that. So
So I couldn't slide into your DMs, is what you're saying on Instagram. Not possible. Is that correct?
that was a couple of decades in the future.
Yeah.
It was all just very, very basic text chat. And the question was, and we really was, would the internet community allow commercialization? Because, we knew we had a good thing. We would talk and share and so on. It was a club, right? And the question was, even those of us that were business minded, was whether the internet community would tolerate people trying to do business while everybody else was trying to share knowledge and information and just get acquainted or what have you.
Right.
And date, right? Way before there were any kind of apps.
Yeah.
I did meet some young ladies through the early internet. So you're not going to change human nature, right? One of the
Definitely.
very first things we did was to start. Oh, you're in my area, and you're my age, and you are whatever group is of interest to me. Well, let's meet. Let's see if there's some romance possible there.
Is that how you met your wife? Wait, is that how you met your wife or no?
No. No, that was somewhat more traditional. It was a networking event, so we just kind of met IRL.
Yeah.
There was no digital component to it. But yeah, so anyway, kind of unpacking some of that. Right. So these guys met this visionary and said the only way that you're going to compete, if e-commerce is going to be feasible at all, the only way you can compete with Borders and Barnes and Noble, which why would people go put their credit card on the internet, which was unheard of, and go through this really challenging interface, right? The whole shopping experience, then pay for shipping. Prime was 20 some years in the future, and wait for this thing to show up, because again, most in order to have this be affordable, they would usually send stuff either by mail or UPS 18th class by donkey. So why would anybody buy this book when they could just go down to the bookstore? And the answer that we came up with was, well, if we give you fantastic recommendations and they say, I mean, here's this book by this 18th century Swedish author, it's out of print, you'll never see it, hear of it, nobody's ever heard of it, but I recommend it to you and you love it, then you're going to, not only are you going to keep coming back here, but when you see a book that you like in the bookstore, you're going to put it down, you're going to go home, log on, and go to Amazon, Jeff Bezos, and buy the book from you, because they're going to want the recommendation engine to know what you're buying and get smarter and smarter and keep giving you better and better recommendations. And Bezos said, that's not a bad idea. Okay, I will try this for my little book site. Let's see if I sell a few more books. Rumor has it he sold some books, right? So
I don't know. Actually, I have no idea. I don't know. I've never heard of the guy. Have you?
Here and there, I think that there's a Lauren Bezos. Maybe she's related to, Jeff. I don't. So that was and so then we sold. I got connected with them and we sold this recommendation engine to anybody that was doing e-commerce. When e-commerce just then exploded in the late 90s and early 2000s. And we had this, amazing .com boom, and the irrational exuberance, right? The bubble, which was my first bubble. But, again, I've seen, a real estate bubble and NFT and crypto bubble,
Right.
which is, reinflating, TBD, right? And now an AI bubble. And just because, there is, irrational, exuberance and a bubble doesn't mean there isn't a there, right? When the dot-coms imploded and Amazon almost, went under, they were lucky that they had, enough funding to ride this out. And, they were not profitable for decades, right? It's
Right.
only when serendipity is an amazing thing, right? When he had to buy tons of servers to handle the Christmas rush
Right.
for Amazon shoppers, that then sat for 350 other days of the year, sat there taking up space and electricity and so on. Said, what the heck am I going to do with all this excess capacity? I know I'll do a timeshare, and this is where AWS came from,
Wow.
and which has been 80-90% of Amazon's profits. All the rest is pretty much break even.
I don't
AWS.
think many people know that, honestly. I don't think many people actually understand that AWS is really the infrastructure and really, call it a pun, call it whatever you want, but it is what really drives that company, right? It's the driving force behind it. And even Azure too. I mean, I don't know how big Azure is as a ratio compared to AWS, but still, you see what the trends are. That's where it is, like cloud infrastructure, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, the funny thing is, right, that Google also had built up this whole infrastructure, and when they became a behemoth, then they just figured people are using us for Gmail and YouTube and this and that. They understand that we are cloud masters. They are going to come and use our cloud. So they didn't market it, and people just went to AWS because that's what they'd heard of. Same with Azure and Microsoft, right? Microsoft had tons of servers, but they were busy pushing Windows and Office and so on and so on. And so again, to some degree, um, I mean, some of it is, again, so much of business is luck, honestly. Not just at being in the right place at the right time. There are plenty of people that had, were ahead of their, the time, and had ideas and so on, and then stumbled, right? Or again, I joined that group, and if they had known how to actually create websites, properly and service the customer, then we probably wouldn't be talking, right? I'd be, retired on my yacht. But I didn't have the luck of the. Sometimes the lucky thing is who your competition is, right? So
Right.
AWS, just again, not to say that Bezos wasn't, has proven himself to be a visionary and a genius, but if Google and Microsoft had picked up on that and promoted their cloud business, then he would not have had this cash cow that enabled Amazon to really, become what it is today. Just like, again, Netflix, right? If Blockbuster had,
Right.
not refused to buy them, refused to compete with them, and just said, we are brick and mortar, videotapes and DVDs, and that's all we do, all we're gonna do, and all this other stuff is noise. Netflix got really, really lucky that their competitor was fat and lazy and eventually had no vision. So right, it's
Facts. Yeah. It's one of these things where I try to understand that look at like WhatsApp, for example. Like hindsight's 2020, right? They say, right? Let's say WhatsApp didn't get bought by Zuckerberg and Facebook at the time, and now Meta. But like, would they have been a behemoth? Who knows, right? Or YouTube? Who knows? But like a lot of these companies really elevated those, those satellite companies where you can't really make that that judgment call now, right? It's too late because Zuckerberg and Google or whoever bought these like small, these YouTubes and the WhatsApps, you don't know. But the point is that they had the infrastructure in place to really siphon in the money to make it what it is. And if you spin off those companies now and you see all the nonsense that's going on with all this, the scrutiny, those are $100 billion companies themselves spun off potentially, right? Mm-hmm. But you can't say that they would have been $100 billion company if they were on their own. What do you think about that?
It's a great question. So yeah, look, to your point, right? You look at WhatsApp. Well, before WhatsApp was Skype, right? Mm. And Skype became huge, sold to eBay that didn't understand what they bought, why. Again, they had no idea what to do with it. Almost killed it, sold it back for pennies on the dollar to the original people who rebuilt it, who then sold it to Microsoft that again fumbled it. And that's why, we're on Teams now, like why Microsoft finally has shut down Skype, right? Why they bought Skype in order to run it in parallel with Teams, don't know. They never integrated, they just complete waste of bandwidth. They created the opportunity for not just WhatsApp, but Zoom, right? Zoom should never have had any opportunity because, Skype should have owned it. WhatsApp should, and then, look, people, again, not to say that Steve Jobs was, brilliant and Apple hasn't obviously done all, but, this arrogance of, everything has to be Apple and so on. FaceTime, right, should have been WhatsApp and Zoom and every FaceTime could have controlled the entire communication market, right. But they were so arrogant. Nope, if you're going to have anything except an iPhone, then we're not allowing you to communicate. And so, everybody that didn't have an iPhone could not communicate, so they ended up using a Skype, a WhatsApp, a Zoom, some other communication tool. But Apple had FaceTime from the beginnings of the iPhone, I think, and could have made it the standard. And if they just opened it up and allowed other people to use it, could have been the communication standard. Yeah, so the bigger they get, so and look at, but it's so funny because a few years ago, if you'd said to me, there is an opportunity in short form video, I said YouTube owns the video market, and not only that, but people tried this little short form noise, which again, I'm the wrong demographic, right? They tried it and failed, right? It was called Vine.
Right, yeah.
And I mean, they actually did get some traction. And the story, if you follow the story as I understand it, is they actually started to get traction, sold to Twitter. And the original Twitter guys didn't understand or didn't care about what they bought or whatever, and just let it wither, opening the door for TikTok. But
wow, yeah,
if
amazing.
Vine, right? If Vine had not, so that's the funny thing is, right? Sometimes you say, well, they were so well financed by their big brother, like Google or Facebook. On the other hand, if Vine had been left alone to grow, it would have been TikTok.
Yeah.
But they got a big brother that bought them and let them die. And or again, Google was making so much money with YouTube, I guess they did not realize that there was an opportunity. They figured, people are watching our, time wasting 3 minute or 10 minute or 20-minute videos or whatever. They don't want 30
Exactly.
seconds.
Yeah.
Apparently they do. So
Yeah, I think like what people, especially me, what I love understanding is like human psychology, right? And like what the trends are, especially. And what I think what you really hit upon is one thing is attention spans. Human attention spans are very, very low. It's like fruit flies, right? I'm not making fun of our race and as a whole, I'm not a racist. But the point is that you have to understand that people have short attention spans, and as I recently moved to India. I moved to Bangalore, India, and everyone is on their phones. Even the guy selling chai across the street or pani puri is literally on his phone. God knows what he's doing, but he's probably watching cricket highlights, or he's probably watching some Bollywood movie with the girl dancing. Okay, that's a 15-minute reel. That's a song that's very catchy, and then he's like, "Oh, this is an interesting song," and then he goes to download something. Right? It's a cascade, right? And I think that's what people need to understand about human psychology: is that what is going on in the world, and how do you leverage that for any technology, product, service, etc. And I think one thing that you also kind of hit upon was really understanding your customer base, right? Why did Vine fail? Well, I don't know exactly, but understanding customer feedback is key. What I really love about Airbnb and Brian Chesky was like, look, don't have 100 or 1,000 people that like you. Just get 10 people that love you, just like family members, right? And same difference in anything in life. It's like 4 quarters is better than what, 100 pennies, or in right now I'm in a different currency. It's called paisa, which doesn't exist anymore. It's rupees now, but there used to be a penny version of that too. But you'd rather have 4 quarters over 100 pennies, just because there's quality over quantity, and that's how you can really understand if you have something, and then you scale. What do you think about that?
no, I'd have to agree. And one thing is not only, are humans, really interesting animals, but we 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 are susceptible, right? So remember, like our attention spans, again, I've got a few years on you, right? So, I mean, I remember when, myself and my demographic, let alone, my parents and grandparents, that, like, why are you, watching that idiot box and so on, right? Like, if you sat in front, but you sat in front of a TV show for 30 or 60 minutes, right? It was not, there was nothing, I don't think there was ever any programming shorter than 30 minutes.
Right.
And go read a book, right? And so we would read books, and so on. And then we started to start reading more, I guess, magazines and short form and so on. And then the digital age, so I would say again, we are training ourselves, right? This is visual crack. TikTok has perfected visual crack, and they are reprogramming. I think it's been proved. They've done studies, right? That we are reprogramming our minds to the point where, if people watch these really, really short things and you get this hit, right? Every 3 seconds or something, then the 30 seconds or 1 minute or, God forbid, an hour long. I can't tell how many kids I've talked that it's like, I talk to them about movies and they say, I can't watch a movie. It's like 90 minutes. Who the hell is
Right.
like, right? It's like asking somebody to watch something that was like 3 days long or something, right?
Yeah.
With no
Yeah.
intermission. 90 minutes? No. If it's more than 90 seconds, I need another hit of TikTok, right? So
Yes. Wow. Exactly. The trends here is the same thing anywhere in the world, and like right now, I mean, I've been really analyzing the Indian market, and there's about 1.4 billion people here, and I would say 1/3 of the people have cell phones. So what about the other 2/3? What are they doing, right? And cell phones are cheap, but you take the bad with with the good as well. You can leverage that for a lot of different things. So for example, like learning capabilities. A lot of people don't have education here, or can't not don't have education. They can't afford education. So these reels, whether they're a minute or 2 minutes, you can learn a lot about things very quickly, like WikiHow, for example. I have this, I have these AirPods, and these AirPods they're different from the charging case, and I wanted to understand how I can pair them to my iPhone when they're the same product, but it came from a different package. And the WikiHow did it in a minute or a minute and a half. I don't want to sit through a 10-minute video and it was very simple. But you can leverage that for education. You can leverage that for a lot of different things. So I guess talk about a little bit about how like AI is kind of going into this, and like what trends are you seeing with a lot of these talk about reels, talk about whatever you think is you're working on from your end, and like whatever you're doing with the Founders Institute and the companies that you've advised, that you've been board directors on. Like what trends are you seeing, and where are the highest growth, I would say, industries?
That's a great question. I mean, AI is eating the world, right? So as I was saying before, right, that yes, there is a bubble, and there are the pets.com and so on, and I was
Great.
I've been joking with people that so I run a chapter of Founders to world's largest pre-seed accelerator. So anybody in the world that is watching this that wants to explore entrepreneurship, there is a chapter somewhere near you. And if not, you're always welcome to join mine in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. We've had people join us from Italy and from the Caribbean and so on. So you're welcome to join my chapter. But if you want a closer one in your time zone, there's got to be one. Yeah, definitely entrepreneurship, but yeah, now I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, it's more about, I would say, that the trends that you're seeing within AI. Like what is like the growth industries from your opinion?
Right. So my joke was that I fully expect people to come into my cohort with an idea for AI toothpaste, right? Like, what is some product that absolutely has no need for AI? It's so basic and so on. And my joke was, it's going to be like AI shoelaces or AI toothpaste. Well, lo and behold, just a week ago or so, I saw an ad for a product. It's a mouthpiece, basically, that you put toothpaste in it. It has AI, and you put it in your mouth, and it's got little brushes and cameras, and it looks to see where you've got plaque and so on, and it will brush exactly where you need, and then it'll give you a report on the state of your gums and your teeth and so my joke about AI toothpaste is now wrong, because it's not so far-fetched anymore.
Yeah.
So I would say definitely, I mean, AI is eating the world, and there are going to be lots of silly products, but at the end of the day, just like Amazon, after the .coms and the pets.coms went under, the ones that had a business model will stay, and there is a business model, and AI is revolutionary, not evolutionary. We are rapidly moving towards utopia or dystopia. I'm not sure, frankly, but agentic AI, right? I mean, so we recently, just in the last couple of years, I've seen generative AI, right, come out, and again, it has blown me away, because I thought that a lot of the rote, repetitive stuff, right? We would be freed from the clerical and the labor intensive and so on by AI, or by robots employing AI that would do all the redundant stuff, and then we would be free to create. And I figured that, okay, so if we're going to have a lot of people that used to, I mean, the number one job, as I understand it, certainly in North America, is driver, right? That's gone, right? I mean, there is no really debate. There are driverless trucks on the road. There are driverless cabs, right? Whether it's Waymo or Tesla or whomever, they're there. So it's just a matter of time before the human in a vehicle is removed. It's going to be illegal, actually, for a
Wow.
human to be driving a vehicle on a road, just like they don't let you take a horse on the freeway.
Wow.
You
Something
will,
else.
if you want to ride a horse, you go and you ride it, on a track,
Yeah.
or in your yard or whatever. If you
You
want to
gamble
drive,
on it. Go gamble on it. What's wrong with that?
right? Well, that's
Kentucky Derby.
there will be continue to be gambling on driving, but if you want to drive a car, they will say it is completely unsafe for a human with your reflexes and you don't have cameras and you don't have all the technology. That's ridiculous. A human driving a car is it's a murder weapon, right?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So
Yes.
yeah, driver will go, but aside from that, what has been astonishing to me is to see that you could ask these AIs to write you a song, write me a story about Amit and Don having a conversation, but do it in iambic pentameter, and put it where they're both actually sitting on Jupiter instead of on Earth, and you could have 1,000 pages about our conversation on Jupiter in iambic pentameter and so on, and it'd be good.
Yeah.
So I don't even know what we are going, if we're not creating music and art and so on, if the AI is doing it better, what the heck are we going to do? I'm not sure. So it will be providing the food, the clothing, the entertainment, the camaraderie, right? Are we going to interact as humans? I don't know. So either we will all be very, very happy because all of our needs will be met, by the AI and so on, or again, when we have nothing to contribute to society, right? Everything that we want to do can be done better, faster, cheaper by a machine or an intelligence, a non-human intelligence.
Yeah.
What does that mean for us? I don't know. So,
Yeah.
but that's where we're going. They're really, so the opportunities now, right, are to me is agentic, because in the next 12 months or so, you will be able to have a staff of 100, basically for free, right? Because you say, okay, now this AI is my executive assistant, this AI is my CFO, and this one is my CMO, and this one is my CTO, and when they go and they can log on to websites and book you travel and do your taxes and so on, then what humans are you going to be hiring, right? So
Right. Well, how do we preserve those values then? Like we've spoken a bunch of times in the past, right, about values and in morals, and I like to use the word dharma, which is a Sanskrit word, to really, like, your mission, right, in life, the mission to have an impactful life in a way where you're impacting society. Well, based on what you just said, which is not so far fetched, because I agree with you, but it may be far fetched to a lot of people listening to this. How do we preserve those values and saying, like, our human values, like our experiences, our failures? Forget the successes, the failures, right? Where we kind of fell in life, and where people like Don helped a lot of these founders, including myself, as someone who you've given great advice for, and the team that I have as well, and that you met. So in that regard, how do you preserve those values for the long run to really kind of keep humanity alive That's the right word, or your mind alive, right? Your mind really like open and your heart open. You know, how do you kind of tackle that in a non-violent way?
Well, and that's where I'm hoping that we're moving towards utopia, right, rather than dystopia, where humans, will say, okay, well, my needs are met, right? I mean, food, clothing, shelter, so on, are basically free or next to free because they're being provided by, technology. And so, what for as long as founders, get value out of me sharing my knowledge and all the mistakes that I've made, I will continue to share that and get joy, if nothing else, right? Hopefully make a buck here, but I guess, right, potentially, yeah, I may not have any need, right? When there's really nothing that you want, that you need to spend more than, a few pennies on, then accumulating more wealth, right? At what point, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and so on, right? They're making, they try to make more money so they can give more away, right? It's just a game. And so, I'd be happy to play that game, right? Keep accumulating as much wealth as I can and give as much as I can away, and see how much good I can do with it, right? How many founders can I help? How many, dogs and cats can I rescue? How many? I mean, again, healthcare, right? Healthcare, for example, is one that, I really do believe that we are on the cusp of, truly exponential improvement, when all of our devices are collecting all of the data on every breath that we take, every cell in our body, and so on, and then we can, I mean, look at what we're doing, right? If my grandmother and I, she's no longer with us, but if she were, and we both had an ailment, we would go to probably the same doctor and get the same prescription, and we would both get, the same of the 1 million antibiotic that's pumped out of the factory and so on, for her with, her size and her weight and her, gender and her genetics and so on, and me taking the exact same mass produced. This is insane, right?
Yeah.
If right, if you said, and again, this is where we see in some of the, dictatorships, right, where they just like it's one size fits all. We're going to produce one type of bread, and you all get the one, if you're lucky enough that, you stand in line to get a loaf of bread, and you're grateful that you were able to get that bread. There is no white and wheat and rye and sourdough and, blah 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 blah, pita and versus bread versus bagels, right? All the choices that we have. Why do we not have these choices for something so mission critical like the medicine that should be tailored for me and my specific needs that are vastly different? So medicine, all these things where, and again, education, right? I just sat behind a school bus on my way to the gym, this afternoon, griping that why are we still doing, 18th century? We used to, send the kids to walk or to ride their horses to the little red schoolhouse, to all sit in the same room with, the teacher, right? Like with, Charlie Brown, wah, 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 wah,
Yeah.
right? Saying, and no offense to the teachers, right? That they're one person. How do you teach 30 kids? You deliver a lesson, and then you try to help the ones that need help. And so, what happens to the 20% at least of these kids that understood or knew what you were talking about because they read ahead or they're more advanced? So when you came in, you started with 2 plus 2. They already knew it, so now they're bored, and they're becoming, behavioral problems because they're bored because they're ahead of the class. But you can't teach them because you've got to teach them, right? And the others at the 20% lowest don't get your 2 + 2. So you've got to go, look, if I had 2 apples and 2 more apples, and this is insane, right?
Yeah.
AI is, to your point, right, about the Indian guy with the chai. Hopefully,
Right.
you're right. He's probably watching cricket, but hopefully somewhere in between cricket, he's educating himself,
Go
learning
RCP. Sorry.
learning
Yeah.
English or nuclear physics or how to run a business, right? Maybe he's going to join Founder Institute and learn how to improve his business, right? How to have a, 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 a nationwide chain of chai stands, um,
Exactly.
and
Early
he's going to
adopters. Early adopters. Right? You're an early
get.
adopter of a lot of different things. So how do these people even reach out to you then? Like within like Founders Institute, like what, like there, I see so many different like innovative startups here who are, really trying to get off the ground, right? Having a runway, obviously money, but you're going to have a long runway, but when do you actually take a lift? So like, what does Founder Institute do in that regard? And how do they even get in touch with you across the world, or even like your satellite businesses or satellite, I would say, Founder Institute areas or organizations?
So I don't know, how your, podcast is set up. If you'll be able to, put, some contact info, right, in a chat or on a banner or whatever. But
Will do. No problem.
my last name is relatively unique. It's Samoil, Sam Oil. So if you look for me on LinkedIn, you'll find me. Don Samoil. I'm pretty sure I'm the only Don Samoil in the world. And there's not a ton of Samoils. There's a handful in Eastern Europe and so on, but not very few in North America. Um, and then Founder Institute is fi.co, right? Founder Institute fi.co. And my chapter is Founder Keystone, so founderkeystone.com. They can certainly look for that. And yeah, certainly, again, if anybody wants to reach out, wants to ask about entrepreneurship or whatever, I'm always happy to give somebody a little bit of time and energy and guidance. People were very, very kind to me in my early days and gave me time and energy and mentorship and referrals and so on. So within reason, right? Time is money, and I don't have unlimited resources in either. But within reason, I'm always happy to try to give somebody a little bit of my time pro bono to help them figure out, something, especially if they want to do something good for the world, right? Do well by doing good, right? I'm all about making lots of money, get rich, get filthy rich, and employ lots of people, and give back to your friends and your family and so on. But
Absolutely.
I'll close with, there's a misquote, right, from religion, where they misquote and they say, money is the root of all evil, and it's not. The quote is very, very important to note the difference. It's the love of money is the root of all evil. So if I give you a scalpel, right, you could potentially save millions of lives by performing operations, right? But if you misuse a scalpel, you can hurt people, right? So the
Right.
love of money is a tool. You make money, make lots of money, and then use it to do good things, and help people, and make people happy. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, it's an amazing take-home message. Yeah, thanks for your time, Don. And yeah, absolutely. I'll definitely put that information about Founder Institute, and appreciate you being on the PranaTech podcast, and definitely looking forward to connecting again in the future. Thanks again.
My pleasure.